Cold open question of the day, Brendon Kleen. The Charlotte Hornets are, if they aren't already, going to embark on a president of basketball operations job search with Mitch Kupchak moving into an advisory role. Obviously, they have new ownership and all of that as well. But I ask you this, is that a good job for the names we've seen out there linked? Is that a president of basketball operations job that is attractive if you're tasked with fixing that team?
Well, it's one of the most losing, depressing organizations in the NBA dating back to its creation. They've basically never been great. They've only been good a few times. But as much as this is a cop-out, any of the 30 are good. If I'm an executive and I'm scouting the market, so to speak, and sending out my job applications on NBA GM LinkedIn, I'm going to go ahead and take the interview and accept the job from any of them. So this one, you have LaMelo, you have Brandon Miller, and you have ownership who theoretically, at least for the first few years, probably is going to want to make some splashes and spend. I say yes, sign me up for rebuilding the Charlotte Hornets, and they'll probably have a high pick this year too, so absolutely.
I think this comes down to ownership, and we don't know a ton about how this ownership is really going to move and what they're willing to spend and how much of an upgrade they'll be over Michael Jordan as an owner. I think that's the question to me, Brendan.
My question is it possible to be a downgrade?
No. I think the answer to that is no. The talent part of this, I think, is the long-term battle here. Just if you look at, like, I think there are some questions about LaMelo. I think Brandon Miller is in some ways like the more, like, he's not as proven, obviously, but he's been on an absolute roll as of late, and that guy looks absolutely legit, and you have to feel really good about him going forward. They're also linked to, like, all of the names that when you hear GM or president of basketball operations openings now, it's like the names you'd expect to hear. It's Trae Young Langdon from New Orleans. It's Jeff Peterson from Brooklyn. It's Mike Gansey in Cleveland. It's Elton Brand, which is like...
It's people whose names we only know because we've seen similar Woj tweets in the past. Except for Elton Brand, we don't know who those people are. So
yeah. Well, like, I know Gansey, like, a little bit just because, like, he was... It's funny because he was, like, very, like, linked to the John Beilein hiring, but the Cavs have, like, I think almost tried to, like, scrub that from the history of their franchise that they ever hired John Beilein.
So for those NBA fans who do not live in Cleveland, but I mean that's the point. It's the usual suspects is where I'm going with this.
It's guys that are, like, viewed as, like, the next level, the next guy in these searches, and sometimes that means something, and sometimes it doesn't mean anything. Elton Brand, like, getting another chance to run a front office to me would be really interesting. That's not the purpose of this question, but just considering how the Philly thing went for him, and then they have to, like,
he
bring
still works
Daryl
there.
Morey. I know, but it's just like,
I think he's pretty involved. I just think it's
he just got
another guy. I mean, the Jazz did the same thing. Do we think that their guy sucks now? I mean, it happens.
No, that's true. But I think the right answer is there's only 30 of these jobs. So you can't really be picky. It's just there are so lots of questions about this job compared to maybe some of the other. Like, would you rather have this or the Wizards job?
This, because we know Wizards ownership, and they have no talent. They don't even have a LaMelo Ball or a Brandon Miller.
Yeah, and now there's a whole story about how, like, the Kuzma thing. They actually did almost trade Kuzma, but the deal fell apart today. A lot of stuff going on in DC. All right, on today's show, we're going to have our guy Zayan come through later and talk about what teams can actually make the NBA Finals. We're going to do a little draft, but we're going to talk about Trae Young and trades up first.
A spectacular move by Michael Jordan. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Welcome in. This is the Just Basketball Show, your twice-weekly show about all things basketball. I'm sure by later this week we might be talking about Caitlin Clark setting a scoring record on top of a bunch of other things. But I'm Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. If you haven't already, please follow, rate, review, 5 stars only under podcast app platform of choice. Hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel. And I want to tell you about our friends at Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is a player prop DFS platform where you can pick more or less on your favorite players across multiple sports. including the NBA and the NFL. Sign up today with our code JustBasketball, and Thrive will match your first deposit up to $250. Brendon, the trade deadline obviously has come and gone. The Hawks didn't make any moves. But there has been no player talked about in trade capacities more since the trade deadline than Trae Young.
Yeah.
And Mark Stein at his Substack wrote a story about this the other day. This is the line that caught my eye more than any other in this piece. Quote, I can tell you this much. They've certainly convinced various rival teams that a DeJounte Murray in a Trae out course is going to be legitimately considered. The Hawks, to be clear, have not made a firm decision yet. This isn't the time to lock into such a lane with 29 games left in Atlanta's season and a trip to the plane run at the very least more than within reach. How the rest of the season plays out is absolutely going to factor into those steps. So, Brendon,
Yep.
what do you make of this? What do you make of the idea that Trae Young is already perhaps being like soft launch as the next name brand player on the move?
It only surprises me because of the context with Murray. Because you might have various levels of how much you like DeJounte Murray. People have debated whether he can return to his defensive form as a good point of attack guy and steal guy in the past, or if he can't, is the three-point shooting from this season real or not real? Is he a great passer or kind of just a mediocre or good passer? There's all sorts of... He's a debated player. He's not a franchise player. So I know it's only written that way by Mark Stein just because we all thought Murray would get traded, so it's just sort of comparing them in that capacity. But from a Hawks standpoint, and this might be part of why they're floating it, but you have to be pretty damn positive that you are getting a foundational organization reset type of package for Trae Young. I think we can talk through the teams that Mark Stein listed out and discuss whether they would get that from these teams. But honestly, where I fall in between maybe those two sides of it would just be, unless it was like an Anthony Davis level package, Chris, I would probably walk away forecasting out to a potential trade actually happening this offseason. And I put myself in that mindset based on what we know now. I would probably feel like it happened because the Hawks were being cheap more than anything else. It's not fun to pay somebody $50 million when you're mediocre. That doesn't mean you shouldn't.
Yeah, and look, Trae, for all of the warts, I like that. That is a very named star player. Like, he has been since college. Like, he's someone that people know. Now, has that changed over the last couple of years? We've talked about this a little bit. I think it has. It feels like it has in the broader discourse, but he's still a really, really talented player who's really good. I also just think that this is maybe a way for the Hawks, if you think about it. If part of the DeJounte Murray trade conversation came out of a place of, we have to pivot here in some way, this is the cleanest way to do it, and then for whatever reason the market didn't break that way for them vis-a-vis Lakers trades or whomever else, this is a bigger, bolder way to do so, and it's a little more painful, it's a little more drastic, it's the very
But
least
this isn't
grabbing.
a pivot. This is a reset.
Yeah.
This is tearing it down. Like, you don't have a team anymore if you trade Trae Young. You are the Hornets who we just started the show with.
You are the Hornets with you're the Hornets with a really good coach who is probably going to, like, that's probably the interesting part of this to me, is based on everything we know about how Quinn Snyder, this is really what I should have led with, if I'm being honest. Based on everything we know about how Quinn Snyder ended up in Atlanta, it wouldn't shock me if, it would be surprising to me if he wasn't giving his opinion on this and saying, like, I'm maybe not a Trae guy. That's speculation, to be clear, but, like, I don't know if you get here, because when you read the reporting, it doesn't read so much to me as they are like Trae is unhappy. It's more of like the Hawks maybe want to move on from Trae. It's not star player X is unhappy with X team. It is more the team maybe wants to move off of the star player, which is interesting as far as the structure of this goes.
Yeah, and to me, Trae Young is not the main thing wrong with Atlanta.
No.
On the court. He's kind of doing his job. They're not a good team right now, but he is ninth. They are ninth in offense, and that is largely because of him. They also play a lot of one-way players around him, so of course that helps. But they are 27th in defense, and they don't really make sense in terms of how they're built. I think Clint Capella breaking down and really just impact-wise falling off a cliff is, to me, the biggest reason that their defense isn't even passable. But the DeAndre Hunter pick and development hasn't worked. There's all sorts of things you could point to. Trae Young, I still think if you did build correctly around him, could be a great player on a really good team. It might be a very specific build of what that looks like, but there's a lot of players you could say that about, and those teams aren't packing it up and quitting. So I guess my other thing, though, to talk about Quinn Snyder is, if you're asking me who I would rather pick to build around, between, even take the specifics of who it is out of it. Let's say a player as good as Trae or a coach as good as Quinn Snyder. I'm picking Trae 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, you should.
So it kind of doesn't really matter to me, with all due respect to Mr. Snyder and his lovely red glasses, what the hell he thinks. I don't care. I have a franchise cornerstone player, and I'm not parting ways with that unless the return is amazing, which I think maybe brings us to the teams here. San Antonio,
Spurs.
the Lakers, and the Magic seem to be the three that have come up in different places. I would think the Pelicans would be interested also, given that they were interested in Murray and we know they need a guard. So I'll throw them in there. That gives us 4 teams. I kind of just don't really think the Lakers have a competitive offer compared to some of these groups, but they're the Lakers, and this type of stuff falls into their lap. So
Also,
I would put them at the bottom. Who do you think
Also,
is the biggest?
Clutch.
Exactly.
I'm just
and that's
saying,
part
I'm
of
just
why
saying,
it falls
yeah.
into their lap, right?
Just to
one
like
and the
put
same.
it in bold-faced type. Yeah, the fit I like the most for him would be Orlando. I think that's the best one for Trae the player. Mm-hmm. I think it's Orlando or San Antonio that is the best one for Trae the player, because he would get defensive infrastructure provided to him, even if these teams give up a lot to get him. Like, look at what he would be around in Orlando. Look at what he would be around with Victor Wembanyama on his own and San Antonio. That is more than adequate, and those are both teams just dying out for ball handlers and passers at the level of Trae that can then cover up for a lot of his other flaws. Those are the two that I'm most interested in. You could convince me of New Orleans as well. The Lakers would be like a star talent play, but him and LeBron to me would be such a weird. Like, I can't exactly see them playing together. Like, it's just something weird about that combo to me, even if there's some passing synchronicity there and whatnot. But that would feel like a star play more than anything else. I think the best place for Trae would be San Antonio or Orlando, as far as how does he fit and how does he get a situation that isn't a different spin on the Atlanta coat of paint? How does he get a chance to evolve into the next phase of his career? I think those markets, those teams with those players would offer him the best case to do it.
The Spurs offer would be pretty great if it were to happen this, before the draft or on draft night, because they could offer this year's pick, which we don't know what it'll be yet, but very, very high, along with any number of their young players, which you might vary on how good you think they are. But yeah, obviously, if you're going to say one of the most defensively limited players in the NBA, who do you want to put him with? The best defensive player in the NBA whenever he gets into his prime, that's probably the guy you would pick. And even players like Vassell and Sohan, although Vassell, maybe more theoretical as a defender right now, Sohan's been very good on that end. you're starting to build the type of roster that I think makes a lot more sense for him, and they clearly need a point guard. This would be a huge way of solving that. I am of the opinion that they should be acting with more urgency because I think Vic will be, you want to be ahead of him being ready to win, not behind it. You don't want to have a full season go by where you say, damn, he was elite. Luka made an all-star team in year 2. I believe he made first team All-NBA in year 2, right? This stuff can be very quick and you got to be ready for it. So I would like to see that type of move for them. But I think the clutch part of it, to maybe tie a bow on any of this, is it might not be his decision yet, but I think we can both agree that if it gets to the point where there are actual discussions, it will very quickly become more controlled by him and that agency, because that tends to be how these things work. And so maybe that makes the Lakers more likely. Maybe we find out he says F that to going to live in San Antonio for the next few years. We never really know, but
I mean, it's funny. The San Antonio part is just funny in that case because there's a line in the Stein report that reads, quote, "It is likewise believed in some corners of the league that Young would have interest in South Texas as a destination if he were forced to leave Atlanta."
And that keeps coming up like that. This isn't the first time that connection has been made, and that really surprises me. I wouldn't want to live there. I know a lot of beat writers say that's the worst city in the league to travel to. And that's not even like shade on San Antonio. It's just like you could pick a lot of other places that are probably more appealing, but maybe it's just Victor.
Yeah. This is going to be fun, Brennan. The NBA never does not provide something like this. And like with this and then Paul George's extension stuff, I'm just like I'm ready for some weird.
And Cat, who we will talk about with Zayan momentarily.
Yeah, I'm just like ready.
Bomb. We already have a bunch of them in the fries are in the cooker. The timer's on. We just got to wait for the beep to come, and then there will be more stuff, more fireworks.
No, where the NBA is perpetually that meme of that guy who like has the heat on really high in his stove, and he throws something in the pot and he waits for it to explode. That's the NBA at all times. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, and you're right. It is.
Also, this was also thrown in the Stein thing, and we just want to put this there. Kind of like we're putting this Trae thing out there, and then we'll have to come back to it at some point. He wrote this, quote, "I know of at least 2 teams on the NBA map that believe LeBron James would consider signing with them at far less than $51.4 million if Bronny James is on the roster. There might be more," end quote. We'll see if that's true, that LeBron's talking about that has changed over time. If I had to guess, Brendan, right now, the 2 teams that think that, can I give you my guesses?
Okay.
Cleveland and Golden State. If it's not the Lakers, it's those 2.
Yeah, it can't be any teams over the second apron because then you're talking about him taking a minimum, and he's not going to do that. So that's the other factor. Like we talked about this a couple weeks ago and we threw out the Suns and whatever else. The Suns can't do that. So you really are – the number has to be very, very small. And so 2 sounds like the right number, and those 2 teams, I would certainly believe it. I'm on record saying I hope Ronnie doesn't have to deal with that, but maybe there's no way of avoiding the media circus and all the attention that will be his first couple years in the NBA, no matter if he plays with his dad or what city it's in. But yes, more so than Trae or Cat or PG, perhaps the greatest player of all time switching teams is going to be headline number 1 this NBA offseason for sure.
Before we get to our guy Zayan, I want to tell you about our friends at Homage. Homage is the ultra-comfortable specialty apparel company designed with NBA and WNBA licenses. They have vintage-inspired designs that pay homage to the greatest stories, traditions, and figures across sports, music, and pop culture. Use our link below, make your purchase, and support the Just Basketball Show. I am eagerly awaiting them restocking the Homage starter collaboration jackets for baseball season. Let me just buy a Guardians jacket, Homage. I'm ready to throw my credit card information and buy something. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready. Are the Guardians going to be good? I don't know, but am I going to probably not going to spend enough money to make me happy. But am I going to be excited about going to Guardians games and walking over to the stadium in my sick ass jacket? You're darn right I am, and I'm going to bully Brennan into buying one as well at some point. But all right, here's our guys on. Let's draft some NBA title contenders. All right, let's now go to who can actually win the NBA title. We're going to do a draft of teams, randomized list order. We have our guy Zayan here, who does amazing work on our TikTok page, on his own TikTok page as well, to help us draft And we're going to do a little randomizer, snake order draft. We're going to do 3 teams a piece here. Are we ready, guys? Are we ready for the randomizer?
3 apiece. Okay. I actually don't think I didn't have my depth chart listed. I didn't know. 3 makes perfect sense, but now I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
I put this in,
we don't have our full 5s. We're not doing lineups here.
We could. When I was thinking about this, Brendan, and I was running the back, something we did last year. 5 felt like a lot. Like one of us would be
there's
like,
not 15 contenders, so
no 50. Yeah, half the league is not. 9's the right number, and like 9 is probably a little dicey. Zayan, let me ask you this: is there a certain pick you want? Like I can't guarantee that. Obviously, I'm not going to rig the randomizer here in your favor. But is there like a pick you feel like would be most advantageous to you?
I feel like going second helps out.
That's the right answer. All right, let's go.
We're doing
a
snake draft.
We're hitting randomize. Oh, crap. Here's the order. I am first. Brendan is second. And Zayan is coming around the hot corner at number 3.
So how does this work? We pick 3 teams each that we think can win it all.
Yeah, we're going to all team win it all.
But
so
one each pick. Yeah.
One at a time.
Yeah,
so we're going to go through.
Gotcha.
So I have the first pick and the 6th pick, which is great. That said, to kick us off, I'm taking the Denver Nuggets. I'm just going to take the defending NBA champions. They have Nikola Jokic. Ever heard of him? Could win the MVP again this year. That team is proven. Certainly some things to figure out, and parts of that rotation I don't totally love. But the guys that are going to play for them in crunch time have been there, done that. Jokic is only going to get better when the playoffs come. We've seen him do it before. Murray is a playoff 16-game player. This team absolutely just can do it. There's the least questions to me about teams. Their biggest obstacle, frankly, might just be, do they end up as like the 4 seed in a very competitive top of the Western Conference and have a slightly harder than optimal route to the finals? But I'm just going to pick the defending champs because they have, in my mind, the best player alive. And I don't have a ton of concerns about them as of right now, even though they just lost to Milwaukee.
So, a weird game. Both Murray and KCP go out. That was a tough one. I was hoping we could talk about that game today, and then it's like, all right, so sports happened and bodies happened, and I feel like you kind of have to throw that one out. But you said that their biggest obstacle, Chris, is seeding.
I said maybe their biggest obstacle.
Yeah. But I mean... Okay, so then anything else you care to share about what another obstacle could be, or are you just going to throw a maybe at me so that as your your shield of defense here?
I mean, look, their roster once you get a little bit deeper, I think you're gonna it's a little bit of projection. Peyton Watson is like projecting that guy as a legit playoff guy. Are they gonna get exactly what they got last year from Michael Porter Jr. in the playoffs? Like, there are guys on that team I absolutely trust, and Murray and Jokic and KCP, who is just like an ultimate title team glue guy, Gordon. But then you get past that, you certainly get a little bit dicey. You're certainly projecting out some things with different guys and hoping for best case scenarios. To me, it's that and potentially like, hey, do you end up getting Phoenix in round 1? Even if you win that series, did you just bludgeon yourself up against another really good team in an effort to repeat? Like, I think those are the 2 things I would look at.
So a question I want to throw, and I'll pass it to you first, Zayan, because Chris and I battle about how much injuries should matter when we talk about these things. But with Denver, I think it's relevant. They were crazy healthy last year. Like, I don't even know if anybody in their rotation missed a single playoff game. I don't believe they did. If I were to say, let's take Jokic doesn't get hurt, so that's not going to happen. And let's take Murray out too, because that starts to get dicey. But if I say, like, Michael Porter Jr. or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope misses like 3 games in the middle of the second round, do we feel dramatically different about Denver? Because their rotation is young, like Chris said. What do you think, Zayan? Is that doomed for them, or can they bounce back from it?
I mean, so the way I see Denver, it's like remember like the years before the title, it was always when they get fully healthy, then they'll be like real contender, right? Yeah. And so for me, I still feel like maybe KCP or Gordon might be a little too vital. That like Like think about all the stuff Gordon does for them. He handles it pretty decently when he's in the dunker spot. When the ball's just whipping around, and Jokic just finds him in the dunker spot. Like he does a lot for them. KCP is like Chris said, the ultimate title kind of 3-and-D kind of guy. I wouldn't say it would be a death sentence if one of them were to be out. But I like I don't know if Chris mentioned, but I do have concerns about their depth anyways. Coming into this season after they lost Jeff Green, Bruce Brown, I was a little concerned. And even now, like I'll look at them and like, yesterday they were running after the injuries obviously, but they had like that Gillespie. He had a few travels. There was they run Peyton Watson, Strother. It's like Chris said, you're projecting, you're hoping that they come to like they're at the level you think they are. But I would be kind of concerned if one of their starters of that front six, that first six, if they got hurt. Definitely.
Pretty iconic of you to put Jeff Green ahead of Bruce Brown on like the important role player guys. Just want to say a sick flex by you to put Uncle Jeff ahead of Bruce Brown.
That's the one difference to me, though, that I think is the only reason I'd be nervous is those two guys, no matter what order you put them in, they were both vets. And so it was like Christian Brown was the big if, and him coming around did help. And I think that has to give you faith that by May or whatever it's going to be that I mean, honestly, though, that's probably too giving. The first round's going to be hard for them, to Chris's point. So maybe, we have 2 months for these guys to get ready. And that would be the optimistic case is like, well, they already did it. They already got Christian Brown ready for the playoffs and he made an impact. They can do that with Peyton Watson, given he's not a rookie. And, at that point you have Jackson, Watson, and Brown, and that's your three guys off the bench. And there you go. There's your rotation. But yeah, if you have to get one more guy deep into that and everything, I do think you start to get concerned. I think all the guys they brought off the bench last year could shoot it, whereas can Watson shoot it? How streaky is Reggie Jackson going to be? Those questions definitely are on my mind. But yeah, I think they have to be the first overall pick. I'm number 2, correct, Chris?
You are.
All right. So the obvious question is, what conference are we hitting? Are we doing a second Western Conference team, or are we going to the East? And
you're just like Monty Morris
ever...
has really sold me on the Wolves. That's where you're going here.
I mean, that would be another Western Conference team. No, I'm not going there, but I am going to stay true to my roots in the west of the Mississippi, and I'm going to pick the Los Angeles Clippers. I think that they are. Yeah. I understand the idea if we're going to compare these teams at the end of the season and bring Zayan back on and say who won this thing, that it would be sort of silly to pick another Western Conference team when I could get a finals opponent for the Nuggets. But I just think the Clippers are the second best team in the NBA right now. I think we're also talking after a night where they lost an uncharacteristic one and made some boneheaded turnovers, and Russ was a little too involved, missing layups over Rudy Gobert, and just ball movement and everything was off. I believe in it. If Lou can get them into the right habits and Harden can continue to play the way he's been playing, and that pace and movement stuff can at least not creep up too badly, I think every other part of this team is real. I think you would have thought they needed another wing. I think Amir Coffey's playing fine. Russell Westbrook is finally playing like a center, which is what he should have been doing 5 years ago. And the starting lineup for this group is about as good as it can possibly get when you just look at a rim protector, a rebounder, size, length, shooting, ball movement, a real point guard now. I don't know what else you really would be looking for to say this group can win 4 consecutive playoff series, if healthy, of course, but right now they are. So we're doing this draft on February 13th. I'm using the injury reports active as of February 13th, and so I'm going with the Los Angeles Clippers. Am I crazy to go there over the Celtics, Chris? I'm assuming they're going to be the next pick.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Zayan, who is also a Celtics fan, but I mean, neither of us picked the team with the best title odds from our friends at BetMGM. The Celtics are plus 275. The Nuggets are plus 425. Somehow the Bucks are still
what are
plus
the Clippers?
475. The Clippers are plus 600. They are 4th.
Yeah, those are great odds.
I really like this pick for the Clippers. I mean, I think Kawhi should be getting some MVP consideration. Yeah, with how good he's been and the level he's been playing at. I think he's been that good. So I'm there with this team fully. Certainly, I know we do go back and forth on the health stuff, and I'm often the one who's like, but you have to worry about health. This is obviously the one where it's Kawhi Leonard's knee disintegrates in a playoff series again. It's all right, we can all go home. This was fun, but it happened again. Things went wrong for you guys. That's kind of the scary part of this team. But there's nothing in terms of how they play, what they play, how they play, the level their guys are playing at, that I think takes them out of the conversation to be a legitimate title contender. I think this is you could have done these 3 teams, I think, that are going to go 1, 2, 3 here in any order, and I think you could have defended your pick realistically.
What's the biggest case against the Clippers, Zayan, if you had to pick one?
I mean,
Besides health.
A, obviously health,
yeah.
and then B, it's James Harden being the system. I do think it is something to be wary of. Even last season with Philly, he had a fairly solid regular season, and then he had really inconsistent playoffs. Like that series against the Celtics, he had 2 40-point games and 2 sub 10 or sub 12-point games. So obviously he came to LA and now he's running the show. He is the point guard, but that, as good as it is for the regular season, I always have just a little bit of a hesitancy when it comes to playoff basketball, especially, he is a little bit step slower. It's doing fine in the regular season. He's putting up great numbers, honestly, 17, 6, and 8, something like that. Really efficient. But that is my concern. It's health, and then can James Harden, because historically he's not a riser in the playoffs. He's either same level in the regular season or he goes down, which is what you don't want. So if he can stay at the same level, I'm fine. I'm cool. But if he goes lower, then it's Kawhi's got to... And Kawhi will bump up. Paul George will probably be around the same. But, though it puts even more on them. And we've seen, both of them, their numbers aren't eye-popping. They both put up around 24 a game. That's kind of how they've built their system out. But, yeah, James Harden has to be number 1 after health for me.
So one stat before we go to the third pick, while we're comparing these West teams. Starting lineup, best lineup for the Nuggets, 127.7 offensive rating, 114.3 defensive rating. So that's a plus 13.4 net rating. Starting lineup, best lineup for the Clippers, 123.9 offensive rating. So a pretty significant step down, but a much, much better defensive rating, 109.4. And those groups have both played a ton together. So they have basically an equivalent net rating. The Clippers is a little bit better, but it's about how they're doing it. And that clash of styles is going to be super fascinating. These teams have a history, and the Nuggets have kind of owned them lately, but I think Zubats is better. They now have Plumlee and Tyson there too. So, man, I kind of hope we get this series. At some point, it might not be in the conference finals, but I really hope we get it, because this is 2 teams that have been building toward this moment that might kind of peak together and finally get that playoff clash. But what do you got for the third pick, Zayan?
Yeah, like you guys are saying, for me, it's got to be the Celtics. Look, there's nothing to me that has screamed red flag about the Celtics this year, which is it's anything. They look fine. They look good. They look the best team in the league record wise or net rating. They're probably up there. Yep, 9.5, best net rating in the league. They're up there in all the good metrics and all that stuff. But the only reason to really be concerned is Porzingis' health. He's been fairly healthy. He's a little bit in and out this season, but not too bad. But you just see the difference in play style when Kristaps is in versus when he's not. When he's in there, when he's playing, they can play a little more inside out. They have that post presence that they do not have if he's not there, and they have a rim protector. But the moment he's out, it becomes a whole different game and becomes a little bit more of that just only drive and kick, only shooting threes, and I should say only shooting okay looks from threes. That's one of my biggest problems with the Celtics. They shoot that first shot, the first half decent look they get, they put it up, and then if it goes in, it goes in. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and then they just kind of keep running that over and over. But Porzingis' health is number 1 for me. But I can't pick any other East team at the moment, honestly. Like the Bucks, I'm really high on the Bucks, I feel, but
Well,
like
let's save the Bucks because they're gonna come. I think someone is gonna pick them. So
I'm sure they'll be in the next
yeah.
few picks, yeah. But I'm just saying, like you look at the other East teams, like you look at the Bucks, Philly, obviously with Embiid, who knows what's happening there. The Knicks, like I can't put any of the other East teams right now in good conscience over the Celtics. Like it doesn't do it. So it has to be Boston. It has to be the pick.
Before we go to your next pick, Zayan, I just want to. The one thing I will say
Yeah.
about the Celtics that I think you hit on pretty well there is there's the way they play, and this is not new for them. This is a pretty standard thing for them. Is if they just run cold in the playoffs for a series and face an opponent that isn't running cold, they can kind of just get screwed and lose. And there is a risk for them with that. That is why I think they feel not overwhelming to me in the East, and it's just the track record. But like, it's also possible like this is the year that they don't have these issues. Porzingis solves some of that, and they're like really top solid 8-9 man rotation, and they're fine, and that doesn't matter. But that's like the risk for them in up until like they play a team, the best team from the West to me is do they just have an off round and the Knicks, the Cavs, the Bucks, whomever just catches them
like
in a
some
wrong
team
series.
that can really muck it up. Like say they play the Knicks or something like that. A team that can slow it down, maybe make them play their style of play. Like it can mess them up. Like you said, like there's nothing on paper wrong with the Celtics. You look at them and like, oh, their offense is great, top 5 offense, top 5 defense, MVP level player in Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, obviously great number 2. Like there's nothing wrong with them. It's just you look at them and you're like, you know what they've done before. You know the style of play is streaky. It's not consistent. So it's like, as a Celtics fan, like you're just like, hopefully that doesn't happen, and hopefully Porzingis stays healthy and stuff. Which isn't a great place to be,
Right.
hoping,
All right.
but you know.
All right.
Here's one other thing I would say though is I think their defensive ceiling is higher than it's been. I think this is the best defensive team that they've had in this era, even if like their defensive rating is a little higher. That's always going to be dependent on what the other teams in the league are doing more so than yourself. They're allowing a lower field goal percentage than last year. They're fouling less than last year, getting rid of guys like Grant who can be a little foul prone, and having a more consistent rim protector like Porzingis. He can foul too, but that has all helped. And I could definitely see a series where some other offense, like maybe the best version of the Knicks, the best version of the Bucks, we look at and we think, well, they're not really stoppable. And the Celtics do actually put a dent in them in a way that makes up for the Celtics' own inconsistency. I mean, that's the recipe for them. And I think getting better on that end has gotten overlooked a little bit because we like to just sort of focus on, are they going to go dunk on everybody? No, okay, they still suck. Like, it's not like that. They improved dramatically on defense, and I think that will go a long way. But obviously, still a flawed group. But that is Zayan again, or back to you guys. How are we doing that?
No,
okay.
we're gonna that's a snake. That's how a snake draft works. Brendan, is Zayan picks twice.
Thank you. Yes. I couldn't remember if we had done the 4th pick and that was the Bucks, or if we were moving on. But I'll let you go. Let you go.
All right. 4th pick. Clippers are out, Nuggets are out, Celtics are out. I'll go with the I'll go with the Bucks actually.
All right, plus
I'll go
plus
Bucks.
475. The Milwaukee Bucks, the 3rd best odds at BetMGM.
You're
So
much
the
higher on them
reason-
than we are, I think.
Yeah.
I think I am. I'm very aware that I'm higher on the Bucks than I think most people. And there's a few reasons. One is that I know, like, obviously Doc Rivers, all this stuff about him, but like I feel like I look at the Knicks, I look at the Sixers, I look at the Heat. Who else is in the East? The Pacers. I can't imagine that there's a series where the Bucks play any of these teams and Dame is anything worse than like the 3rd best player, right? Like in any situation in a playoff series, I can't imagine Dame would be much worse than any 2 guys on any other team, you know? Like I know he has his own playoff inconsistencies and people like to say that his clutchness in the playoffs is overblown, which it might be, it might not be. But the point is, I can't imagine he'll be much worse. And I think that his consistency problems in the regular season it's come from being in a new system, being in a new environment, and now again we have a new system, a new coach, and all that stuff. So I'm assuming and I'm thinking that by the time we get to the playoffs, their cohesiveness offensively, the Giannis Dame pick and roll, just in general, the defensive flaws that they have, it's fixed a little bit better to the point where Dame can be more consistent. Because that's, I think, one of their big problems is that Dame, like his counting stats look fine. They look like his career numbers, but it's because he'll have 40 and then he'll shoot 3 of 15 and have 12. And so it's like a really inconsistent thing with Dame this season. So I'm banking on the idea that he will be consistent by the time the playoffs come. And then their defense will become decent to average by the time, it matters.
I am just skeptical of the defense because I kind of just assumed Doc would come back and just simplify everything even more than Adrian Griffin had already done a little bit. And yet I feel like when I watch them, I don't feel like they have fully simplified the defensive structure around Brook Lopez as of yet. And that to me is just like, I don't understand what is going on here. I don't understand like the thought process. Like the recipe for the Bucks to me from the get-go was, okay, you got Dame. He's not a good defender. We know this. You have Brook, you play a very specific style of defense that has been very effective, and you won a title with it. Just do that and don't overthink this. And like maybe there's some like deep, really in the weeds adjustments you can make. Sure, I'm sure there are, and I'm sure there are within drop you could get into. But I think the formula here was pretty clear, and they've just felt like they've ignored the formula the whole year to the point where I'm going to need to see it to believe it, I think, with this Bucks group. Like, it's going to just be like...
Which is fair.
Like, they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they, like... Giannis just goes on a heater, and Dame just, like, torches Derek White, and they get to the Finals, and it's just like, all right, talent went out. That's the lesson from this. That's where I feel like that's where I am with that team.
So... I think the structure is obvious if you have Brook, but I think we underestimate how significantly, like, literally every other component of the team is worse. Like, obviously, if you take away the Bucks part of this, any other team we would have been talking about as what makes a good drop defense, we would have been pretty focused on having a good point of attack defender. That's always a two-person dance.
Excuse me, Malik. You're saying Malik Beasley's not up to defending the point of attack and supplementing Dame? Is that what? And Dame's also not good. Is that what you're telling me?
That's what I'm telling you. And so it's like to have that problem is pretty significant. I also think, and much more plugged in Bucks people tweet videos alluding to this all the time over there, that Giannis's help defense is nowhere near where it was when he won Defensive Player of the Year, or even as recently as like 3 seasons ago. And so that's pretty huge to not have that second level of rim protection to help Brook and make up for Brook. And so it feels personnel-wise pretty hopeless to me. And when you look at some of their defensive lineups, when Crowder has been out there in place of Middleton, that unit has defended pretty well. But it still has Lillard and Beasley. I don't think you're going to trust that in the playoffs. There's a Connaughton in place of Middleton lineup that statistically looks decent. I don't think you're going to trust that. So I haven't seen the 5-man group that's played a ton together that I really trust. But on the other hand, Zayan mentioned Lillard's clutch play. Their defensive rating in clutch situations this season is much better than their overall defensive rating. And you even look at fourth quarters, and it's been able to lock down kind of when it needs to. Their defensive rating in those situations is 118.9. I believe that might be pretty similar to their overall. But they're winning these games late and giving you some hope that can be their recipe. But, man, I would hate to be a Bucks fan on the absolute edge of my seat every single night in this postseason if that's going to be what it is. Like, we're going to win 137 to 136 16 times, and then we're going to win a title. Like, that's pretty insane.
You're up, Brendan.
There's a lot of reliance on timely stops with the Bucks. Yeah. Like, it's like, okay, maybe they'll let you get a 10-point lead, but in the fourth, we're going to, hunker down because there's a lot of reliance on that with Milwaukee. That's the
Well,
thing.
and
My logic is they'll just eventually become cohesive enough on both sides where it's passable defensively.
the race for the, and then we'll get to Brennan's pick, which I tried to segue to incorrectly. But number two, the race for the number 2 and 3 seeds in the East is, aside from the West number 1 seed, the most important race. And you could argue that it is in some ways the most important race because whoever is 2 and 3 is on the opposite side of the Boston bracket.
Yeah.
The Bucks have to go all out to not be on the Boston side of the bracket, I think. All the teams really do, but I think if any of the teams can talk themselves into giving the Celtics a run for their money, it's probably the Knicks, who are the 4 seed as we're recording this. But Milwaukee,
I actually see Boston as not that terrifying of a matchup for the Bucks because I don't think Boston. Here's the thing: it's almost like the Bucks right now are allowing the types of shots the Celtics refuse to take. So it's what is that? You know what I mean? Where does that lead you? I think they've only played once or twice, right? So they have at least one more coming up, and I'm interested to see if they can both be fairly healthy with the additions, and obviously Middleton being closer to full strength and everything else, what that might look like. Although I think Middleton's out again now. So yeah, I don't know. I think the Knicks might punish the Bucks defense more, for instance, right? Or we've seen Miami do it and things like that. So we'll see. But all right, my pick is up.
I'm gonna set this up, Brendan, because this has built to a place where you having to pick between 2 things that I know you love.
The Knicks and the Suns?
Well, no, there's a third one in there.
The Sixers?
No. I'm going to
Who do
get
I
2
love?
teams. I'm not saying
I'm not picking the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's not happening.
Okay,
No.
I'm doing it. I'm absolutely fucking doing it. Are you kidding me?
You can pick them, but I'm just saying I'm not picking them at this particular point. Is
right.
all that if we swing back around to me 4 picks from now and I'm back up, I very well may pick OKC, but
right.
no, not here. I
do it.
No, I hate my own team too often. I'm gonna pick them.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with the Suns. Because of Thaddeus Young, the signing. No, I'm just kidding. I think this team sees itself as a 16-game team, right? We think about 16-game players. I think the Suns are looking at themselves as a 16-game team. I think the moves that they've made between Royce O'Neal and Thaddeus Young together, not that either one of those guys is somebody you count on to be the difference maker, but what I would say is that they've set the team up to amplify the big 3 more, in particular Durant, and obviously the ball handlers within those small ball lineups. They just have more ways to get to Durant at center, Durant as a front court player than they did on opening night when Bol was hurt, Drew Eubanks was playing like crap, O'Neal and Young weren't on the team, and they kind of just had to play big and ram their heads into the wall and hope stuff worked. Now they have an identity. Now they can play spaced out. The defense is not going to be elite. It just isn't. But it wasn't last year, and they took 2 games off of Denver anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and trust that trend can continue, and the star power can get the job done. But I definitely wouldn't have picked them any sooner than this. But it feels like this is kind of where they have to settle in. What do you think, Chris?
This is where I would have gone as well. I was going to pull the trigger on picking them immediately if you didn't, and it's everything you said. I also, Brendan, I get sucked in by Kevin Durant and what he can do for your team in a tight game setting so easily. That guy in a playoff series is just going to be unguardable for just about everyone in the West. You made the joke about Thad Young, but that's at least a useful piece that they've now added into their team when they were really struggling with some of those end of the roster minimum guys, many of whom are now gone and not on the team anymore.
Yeah.
Frank Vogel's a good coach. Even if this is maybe not the perfect Vogely roster, Vogel's a good coach. Devin Booker's still really good. This team does, even with some holes, I think make some sense. And if you're telling me that they rode Durant and Booker through 16 games, and that combo was enough to lean on to get you to the finals, I wouldn't think that's crazy at all.
The other thing I think is outside of Denver, well, the problem is Denver and the Clippers, they don't match up very well with. That's a pretty tough spot to be in. But if you gave me anyone else in the West, including the Thunder and the Wolves, I think the Suns could and probably would beat them. Because I just think you have to be able to keep up with them offensively and at least provide some resistance. And I don't think the Wolves or the Thunder have the right combination to do that. So that's in their favor. But obviously they're going to run up against the Clippers and the Nuggets inevitably. So it's a weird matchup thing for them right now too.
I would also say, too, with the Denver thing in particular, in a world where you're unsure about their rotation guys, we kind of focus on the offensive side of that for those guys, but are some of those guys going to hold up defensively in the way you would want come the playoffs? Like, that is a question, I think, as well. And someone like Bruce Brown, you kind of knew he's going to be competent, he's going to defend well, all that stuff. Like, are you sure Peyton Watson, if he has to defend Kevin Durant for stretches, like, is he up for that? Like, is MPJ...
For him, I trust the defense more than the offense, personally. But I get your point. Christian Brown or MPJ, like you mentioned, those guys are not locks to play up to the level they did last year.
Yeah, so just, I think, some questions there. Zayan, do you have any Suns thoughts before we go to my next pick?
I probably watched the Suns more than any team this year, honestly. I like watching bucket getters, so I watch them a lot.
Real hooper.
But honestly, I don't mind the Suns being your second. Like, I think that makes some sense. Like look, it's a team where it's like you said, they played the Nuggets the best last season. Now obviously it's a very different team now, but they played them the best. It's a team of guys.
That's a dangerous opinion to share, Zayan. Everybody thinks either the Wolves or the Lakers played them the best and can't shut up about it, even though those teams didn't win as many games against the damn team.
Like,
it doesn't make any sense.
It's so illogical. The Lakers were swept. It's so illogical. I don't know how people.
The Wolves take them to overtime once and beat them once, and it's like Minnesota's getting crowned over here. Yet the Suns score like 90 points with their two best guys, and it's like, that was easy.
But you got three guys whose games are very much built for the playoffs, and Booker, Beal, Durant. And then, like you said, I feel like initially early days of the season, I feel like they were using Nurkic too much in terms of those actions they like to get to, where they hand off and they do some cutting off and all that stuff. But I feel like they've got into a nice balance now offensively, and they're only going to get better as they get more time together. And the other teams in the West, like, it's shaking up to be similar to last year, where the top of the West is a little younger, so the bottom half of the West got a good chance to pull some upsets off. And I would take the Suns in the series against OKC, in a series against Minnesota. If they somehow match with New Orleans, that probably won't happen. But if that somehow happens, I would take them against probably all those younger teams. So then you get left with the Clippers and the Nuggets, and you battle it out. But yeah, that's not a bad pick at all, in my opinion.
All right, my pick. I got two here coming around. We're gonna do the homer pick first. I'm gonna take the Cleveland Cavaliers. This team's just really good. This team is just flat out really good. And Brennan's shaking his head. I should have taken the Knicks. That's why he's shaking his head, and he's nodding his head. But look, I think that's fair. I just wanted to, Brennan got his team. I'm going to take mine. I think the way the Cavs are playing of late is just frankly been more impressive than the Knicks. I know the Knicks have some injury issues now, but the Cavs have just been more impressive of late than the Knicks. Mitchell is playing at an absurd level. The Evan Mobley leap is happening. He's taking like 2 threes a game right now. Something here is working. They absolutely have a ton to prove in the playoffs. I'm not going to tell you they didn't. I would not like their odds to get out of the East ultimately, but I don't really like the Knicks odds either. I just kind of think Boston's going to run away with it. And I think we're at a point in this draft where any team you pick is something of a long shot to get out of the conference. Like, I think we're kind of past the group of teams I think feels much more solidly at the center of these discussions and grounded in reality. But I think this Cavs team is just really good. I think they're tough, a lot tougher than they were last year. They're more complete than they were last year. I think they're like vis-a-vis the Knicks. I understand the Knicks have better odds. I think there's just the Knicks did spank them last year. I'm not going to deny that didn't happen. I saw it. there's something with this Cavs team I think right now is just waiting to be unlocked in the playoffs, and I think there's a run possible for them if and they're going to be a high seed, and I think they're going to get the 2 seed, and that's a big boon for them as well in this exercise.
All right.
Do you get Utah Jazz vibes?
No.
Mitchell Gobert Jazz vibes at all from these
I think
guys?
no, because Jared Allen.
Because that's what I get sometimes when I watch these Cavs. Just a little bit. Not as much, but a
I
little
think that's
bit.
fair because I think there is an accentuation of what makes Mitchell great. That kind of the Jazz did figure out and unlocked, and the Cavs I think did tweak the roster in ways to push on those buttons a little bit. But number one, I think Darius Garland, especially if he can just get fully back into rhythm, gives a different kind of guard play, offensively at least, that Mitchell didn't have in Utah. And I think the Mobley-Allen part of this as a defensive front court is another level above just like Gobert on his own, where like you're going to have more coverage. And I think the Jazz felt like they had one style of play to kind of lean on, and when that faltered, it was like, oh, we're fucked now. Guess we're going home and we're blowing this up.
Yeah.
The Cavs have, I think, shown over this run they're on an adaptability that I didn't really think they had, if I'm being honest with you. But JB Bickerstaff has done a really good job adapting. I also just I want Cavs Knicks round 2 like badly. That's what I want is the 2-3. Really, I want if I could. I just give me the bloodbath.
Usually people try to run away from like their abusers. It tends to be like you want to leave those relationships and you're just literally asking for it. The Knicks are going to beat the Cavs.
I'm the just bleed guy. I'm just the just bleed guy. Look, I think the Knicks are really good, and I think they would have been a very valid pick in this spot. I don't think the gap is as big. I just don't think the gap is as big as the market seems to think it is. The Knicks are plus 2,200, and the Cavs are plus 3,000. That's a bigger gap than I think it should be.
Yeah, the Knicks being at plus 2,200, I think that's where the gap seems too big. But we're just on different ends of this. That's all right. You have another pick though, I believe.
Yeah. Interesting ways to go here. I'm going to just take the team that would be the most fun finals answer out of all of this, and they're at plus 1,800, so they're the team with the shortest odds left on the board. That's the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shea's an MVP candidate. Like, he's probably 2 or 3 on my hypothetical MVP ballot as of right now. That team has a distinct style of play that I think is going to be hard to guard in the playoffs. But they're really young. I think they're going to have some growing pains moments in this playoffs. It is just the history of the league tells us that a team this young, as talented as they are, is probably going to get punched in the face a couple times and struggle. But they're going to have a high seed. Shea is a superstar, and I don't doubt his ability at all in the playoffs and him being great there. The Hayward addition is going to help them, I think, be competitive this year. It's not out of the question they just somehow pull this off. So, and if you're looking at who's left on the board between like the Thunder, the Wolves, the Knicks, the Sixers, the Mavs, I'll take the Thunder.
They desperately need. I don't know if the metaphorical, like, if you think of the season as a car here, I don't know if Chet's season car has a reverse in it, but he needs to back away from the rookie wall that he is up against, because that to me has become the biggest thing standing in their way. I appreciate you guys walking through that metaphor with me and getting here to the end.
You landed it.
I did. And so
put it in park.
Look, it's not awful, and this month's been better so far in 5 games. Bad for him, or a rookie wall for him is really just hesitancy. Like, his game is so predicated on, like, he actually can get 20 in the NBA right now, and they kind of need that. It's not just a bonus for them. Their roster in terms of scoring, especially if, as I do, you might worry that, like, Lou Dort's threes maybe don't go in. And there's been teams who have said, okay, like, theoretically you're a 40% three-point shooter, but not really. In addition to Josh Giddey, things start to get clogged. So I trust J-Dub at this point. We obviously all trust Shea. I think their defensive structure is pretty hard to crack, and obviously they need Chet there too, but I don't really worry that he can be a rim protector. You worry about fouls, but, you know, that's the same with anybody. To me, it's can his offense rise to the occasion and just be consistent. Just be 15 points, take open threes when they're there, keep the ball moving. Just don't play outside of what's going on and kind of slow things down or make things uncomfortable for your teammates. And it feels like he's been in that spot lately. But maybe February is a good indication that that's not happening. I'm so rooting for Zayan, a Thunder Clippers first round series with the history of the PG trade and everything else. Like that feels like get your popcorn ready stuff already in round one.
The Thunder, I more than even that, I'm so down for them to just make like a crazy 2012 Thunder run and like a young baby Thunder team makes. I'm so down for that. I think that'd be good for like the league because, like Chris said, like we know young teams don't do this. Like this is not a thing that happens very often, and that's why no one's really high on the Wolves. That's why the Thunder were not your first pick because like they're so. That's really the main reason why. And what you said about Chet, it's funny. I made a video on my account a while back comparing Chet and Wemby, and I said like Chet does this one thing better is because his role is more defined, and he doesn't have to do everything the way Wemby kind of has to with San Antonio. But recently, like you said, that he's been a little shaky in that, like he's been a little bit hesitant. He's not playing within that role as well. So if he can get back to that level where it's like he knows, okay, he runs those trailer pop threes or the like cutting off the wings stuff that he does. If he can get back to that, the Thunder, I think, have a good chance. I like the Thunder more than Timberwolves. I like Thunder more than the Pelicans. I like the Thunder more than who else is there? Like the Mavs, I guess. But like in general, the Thunder are just too young for me to really be like they're gonna make it. But I'm so down for that to happen. I'm really rooting for them though.
All right. My final pick.
Yeah, we know who you're taking.
We do.
Yeah, the Charlotte Hornets.
So I'm assuming you're talking about my Minnesota Timberwolves, which are not really my team.
No.
Okay.
Well,
you keep saying and then there's like 5 teams that it could be. So
let me just like make sure I'm not overthinking this here. Who we've taken so far? Let's just run through this.
Mm-hmm.
Celtics are off the board. The Cavs are off the board. The Bucks are off the board. The Thunder are off the board. The Clippers are off the board, and the Nuggets are off the board. And the Suns are off the board. And then the Suns are off the board. So that's 7. Brendan, there's a team that you like kind of already like judged me for not taking that is staring you in the face, and I just we know where this is
the Knicks.
Going. Yeah, what did we like? Yeah.
I honestly thought that they had gone because we talked about them. In my head, I was like, okay, the Knicks are done. Okay. Yeah, I'll pick the Knicks. I think that what I was going to say, though, when I thought you meant the Wolves, then they are the 1 seed. That's like, in terms of total wins, they're second, they should probably be on here. But
I started looking at the probability reports for the playoffs from Best Reference, by the way. The Wolves have they give them a 58.4% chance of having the 1 seed.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they just beat the Clippers. I think they've now beaten the Clippers twice, so they have that tiebreaker. Like I think things are trending in the right direction for them. So yeah, but the team I think we should at least acknowledge here too is the Sixers. Like they think they're getting Embiid back, and if he is back, like I mean, we were talking about them as a finals threat before, so they maybe they'll be the last pick. So I won't spend my time there, but I'll go with the Knicks. I think Jalen Brunson is better than Donovan Mitchell. I think that Jalen Brunson right now is better than Damian Lillard. He's obviously better than Tyrese Maxey. Let me see Tyrese Halliburton in the playoffs before we make a judgment there. He's going to be the best player in any series outside of Milwaukee, and it wouldn't floor me if we walked away from a Boston-New York series feeling like he was the most consistent offensive killer of anybody on either team in that series. And that goes a really long way. And when you couple that with a roster that actually suits his style much better than even last year's did when he was an all-star or when he was an all-NBA guy. Did he make either of those things? I guess not. When he broke out. They have DiVincenzo just bombing threes like he's peak Klay Thompson. They have multiple center options. They have another kind of attack a closeout threat, or maybe two if you feel like Bogdanovich is that guy between him and Anunoby. We'll see if Randall can get healthy, but I have no reason to believe it's going to really, cut down his ability to be impactful. And even last year he was on a bum ankle and they still got to 6 games in the second round. So just what they did last year in the postseason, the way they've supplemented their roster and modernized their roster, Brunson's making threes better than he ever has, and they just were dominant the last time they had a shot at this and really exceeded expectations against Cleveland and Miami. Give me that team again. And probably outside of Boston, the only other team I would say has a real home court advantage in this bracket. So I don't know. I feel like I thought we were all Knicks lovers here. Somehow they fell to 8, and I'm snapping them up.
I went Homer, Brendan. That's why. And like I just wanted to pick the Thunder because there's something very fun about that Thunder team. And that Knicks team is like the Knicks team is going to be really good in the playoffs, but they're going to be in the sludgiest playoff series possible.
So now it passes to Zayan to either take the 1 seed in the Western Conference or Joel Embiid. That's probably where this is going to land.
Or Luka Doncic, if you really want to get weird.
Or the Lakers.
Okay, if you take the Lakers, Zayan, we're gonna. I might have to kick it. You're probably kicking me off the show at this point because I love LeBron, but good lord, that team is not making the NBA Finals.
I saw that Kevin Garnett's podcast the other day, and he was like, "Why do people talk about the Lakers like they're contenders?" And I was like, "Thank God people are trying to say this." but if the Timberwolves,
I mean, that was just real quick though. Speaking of that was a great point by you on the Thunder. That we should all kind of be rooting for OKC or Minnesota to make a run because it would go a long way if those teams flounder in the first round, like if they both were to lose in the first round or maybe have a bad second round series and just not really factor in that much, then it'd be really easy for everybody to ignore them next season. I don't think any of us want that because those two teams are fun, and Ant and Shea are two real guys. So let's hope that they at least break out in some way to get people talking, kind of like what Brunson did last year. If they can do that, I think that'd be big. But what's your
And that kind of happened to the Kings last season.
Exactly.
They had they're the 3 seed. They lose in the first, and it's like, all right, they're not really much. The Grizzlies kind of had that treatment, with obviously a little different this year. But all right, my pick. I would probably. I'm not that high on the Sixers, to be honest, mainly because of Embiid's health. If the season was 35 games, the Sixers would be a title favorite every single year. Because Embiid at that 35-game mark is playing like prime Shaq, but by the 82-game mark, I'm not going to take them. I'd probably go to Minnesota. If I'm looking at the standings right now, and I'd go Minnesota. Minnesota would be my pick. Defensively, obviously, they're great, and he had a pretty good playoff series last year too against Denver. He had that big moment. What was the Game 3, the overtime win? He's a playoff performer. I don't really doubt him. His game's made for the playoffs. Cat, I do doubt. I do definitely doubt Cat. That's for sure. But I mean, it's kind of it's weird to say about the team that's been number 1 seed for most of the season, but it's kind of like the worst. The best of the rest for me would be the Minnesota Timberwolves. I can't justify. I would love to say the Mavs. I watch the Mavs a lot. Like I said, I like bucket getters, so I like watching Luka and Kyrie. I'd love to say them, but they rely on so many things to go right for them to win any game. They have to make 15 threes and stop their other teams from scoring 120 just to win a game. So, Minnesota's my pick.
I think it had to be. I am terrified for them in the playoffs. Absolutely petrified of what that offense is gonna do.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I was looking at the possible probabilities report and thinking about how this could shake out. There's a world where it's the Mavs and the Wolves in round 1 or something, and it's I would be just a little scared of Luka. It's just if those guys just in the playoff setting just score enough and the Wolves offense just collapses, and it's okay, what are What are we doing here? Where's Carl? Where is Carl being traded on draft night? Like that. Like that's. There's just like a lot going on with this Wolves team and a lot of pressure on them. They don't have the most pressure, I think, of like I think the Clippers. I think ultimately do have the most pressure of those teams in the West we've talked about because, like,
It's year 5.
it's year
Or
5
whatever,
and it's really
4, 5.
expensive
It's year
yeah.
5.
And it's like how long, like how many shots are you really going to get that are this good? I mean, if you pay Harden, are you sure you're getting good Harden again next year? Like, Lord knows, I don't know. But the Wolves also are like staring down the barrel of something that is, it is ominous.
Yeah, but to your point, it's like Minnesota's title window is the next 10 years plus with Ant. The Clippers' title window is however long those guys are on the same team and healthy, and you just don't get that much. So, yeah, I think the Clippers having the most pressure is probably a good call. Even the Suns, it's like Booker's young. All 3 of their big 3 are under contract, even though it feels like they went all in. They didn't just go all in for 1 year. They went all in for basically as long as Durant's contract is and as long as he can stay healthy. So, yeah. Let's cross our fingers for the Clippers. I would like to see them make a run, just to see how it fares. Like, we haven't even gotten to test it in a conference finals, let alone a finals. I kind of just want to see it.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you guys both one last question before we wrap this show up here. Is there a team that we didn't get to that you would have liked that you would have gone to next? Let's say you had the next pick. Is there someone you would want to lump in here with these 9, or is there aside from the one that I know, my pick that Brennan would have went a different direction? Is there a pick? Is there like a pick you would have made? Is there a team that's on the list that we should have just like kicked out of the list in exchange for another team?
I don't think so. I think we hit everything. I mean,
Like
the Sixers we talked plenty about. Like that would probably be the knocking on the door of the list team. I think some people might say Miami. I really don't think that they have it this year. And
Wes Goldberg said
if you're
that
talking
last year
about
and then it happened, but yeah.
True, but they had some various explanations last year at times that, like, Jimmy was playing great last year. They were just losing. Like, they don't even have that to fall back on this year, I would say. And if you're talking about the Dallas, LA, Golden State triumvirate, I would pick the Warriors without question based on how they've played lately. But I think you got to check back in with me in like 2 weeks before I'm willing to draft them in the top 9 contenders or anything like that. So probably those 2, Warriors, Sixers.
For me, I'd probably go Heat. Not out of any logic, honestly.
Fear.
The Heat, it's pure, like...
It's fear.
It's just like, dude, like every year, besides that 2021 year, every year they overperform. They're the 5th seed in 2020, 1st seed, obviously, in 2022, last 8th seed, 7th seed. Every year they overperform. And it's to the point where you almost expect it. So I would put them, and then the next, I would go with, like, say, Dallas or something, just because they're fun. But I don't really trust the Warriors, like you said, Brendan. I don't know how sustainable this little hot streak of theirs is. Maybe the Lakers, just because LeBron, but not really, not really. I'd say the Heat.
I kind of wanted to like say the Warriors if I was gonna pick one, but I'm not really sure I believe that. I do think we hit every team that has like a reasonable path that wouldn't require something miraculous to pull this off. Because like even Philly, I would just say Embiid coming off of this injury and then staying healthy for an entire playoff run to make the finals would be miraculous to me. Like
Agreed.
it would be a lot if he could pull that off.
That's true.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's going to be a fun stretch run. Check out Zayan. Zayan, tell everyone where they can, on the top of the Just Basketball TikTok page, just tell everyone about your TikTok page as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I've been been on TikTok 3 years now. It's just my name now at Zayan.Huda. I just made a video about Wemby if y'all want to check that out. But yeah, essentially I just talk about interesting things I find interesting. It's not always about the biggest players or the best teams, but got to give some love to the smaller markets, the smaller players. And I will say, I think what I've been doing a lot of I guess I could say non-basketball content, but just like my focus. I try to make it really like just basketball. You know, like you got like focused on that. But recently, I've been doing a little bit more of like, oh, that was crazy, you know, type of stuff instead of really trying to break it down. And unfortunately or fortunately, that performs a little better. But you know,
So they captured you. They got another one.
no, don't worry, not yet, not just yet. It just, you know, when you see the views pile up on that one video, you're like, oh man. But then, you know, hopefully you hit some more pure basketball topics. People are already following you, so you know. But yeah, you know, I try to be a little bit more pure to basketball, and that's I'll probably start posting on Instagram and YouTube soon too as well. So I guess stay tuned for that. But yeah,
We'll have Zayan back on in the near future, I'm sure. This has been the Just Basketball Show for Wednesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there. We'll be back later this week talking about two teams, and among other things that Brendon and I are very fond of in weird ways, the Kings and the Magic. Two teams that we didn't get to today, obviously, but they'll come up here on our next show. Until then, I'm Chris. That's Brendon. That's been Zayan. Enjoy the hoops, everyone. Talk to you soon.